Once the stand is assembled and the machine is sitting on top of the stand, you can assemble and attach your thread rack or the thread tree on your machine. This is the thread base, this is the thread tree. The plastic pieces are basically 4 pieces. You got the base, the top of the tree, and then the 3 legs. The legs are going to attach underneath the bottom with Phillips head screws for each of the 3 legs. Attach those to the base, and then the top piece attaches with 3mm bolts. There are 4, 1 here, and 2 here. Once you're there, you're going to set this on top of the sewing arm of the machine, and then there is 1, 2, 3, 4 Phillips head screws, and everything is secured and attached. From there, what we have is a foam base that goes in next, and this simply sets down around the cone holders themselves as a soft base for the cones to sit on. Now that the thread rack is attached to the machine and assembled, we're ready to start the threading process. So just an explanation, on all SWF machines, everything is numbered from right to left. You'll notice 1 is always on the right, highest number is going to be on the left. When dealing with the thread tree and the thread base, keep in mind the furthest cone to the right is always going to be number 1. Second furthest is going to be number 2, and of course the furthest to the left is going to be the last needle. In this case, this is an MAS-12. So this is the tabletop version, smaller of the SWF. So this is a 12 needle, so this is number 12. Keep in mind that if the thread sets on the first row, it only goes through 1 eyelet of the thread tree, the first one. On the second row, it goes through 2 eyelets, and these threads will always be going straight forward, never at any type of angle. So the third row, first eyelet, second eyelet, third eyelet, and keep in mind that the eyelet will always be directly above where the cone of thread is physically setting. So we're going to reposition, show you how to attach the tubes, and then thread your machine for the first time. So now that we're ready to actually attach our threads and pull them through, threading your machine for the first time, keep in mind what a cone holder actually does. When the thread sets on a base, it's able to wobble. Make sure your machine is never operating on its wheels. This particular stand has locking casters, so when it's in place, make sure it gets locked. These can be pulled up and flared out for different types of cones. Keep in mind if you use any of the smaller miniature cones that these always need to be removed. Never set that cone physically on top of the holder. So bringing that up and sliding it through, it's going to lock this cone down into place. This machine does have tubes that attaches to it. So the first thing we're going to do, this sets on the first row of the thread base, therefore up at the thread tree, make sure you come under, and we're going to go through the first eyelet. I can see it. And once we come through there, now there's a couple of ways of getting the thread through this tube. This is a variegated tube, so it's not easy to blow it through. The easiest method I use the first time threading a machine is I simply use a needle, and then what I do is I thread the eye of the needle, pull the thread through maybe a foot or so, okay, and then what I do is I allow gravity to simply thread that tube for me. Now once that's out, I can put my needle down, use it for the next needle. The first one comes up, it's going to go around the post. Make sure you're not crimping the thread. So it's going to slide on. You're just going to pull the thread, make sure it's nice and free. Now the thread is already in the machine from the factory. We will have additional videos on how to thread it from start to finish, but this is how you set it up for the first time uncrating and packing the machine. We're going to tie those 2 threads together. Make sure nothing's going to catch or hang on anything. Now if you notice, we're tied together with the thread that's already through the tension base and through the head. So I'm going to grab down here at the bottom front. I'm going to start pulling that thread. You'll see it come through. And then when I get to here, what we're going to do is attach the tube on the other side. And it just pushes over the top. helps to spin it just a little bit to get it started. But once it's on there, it's definitely not going anywhere. What you want to do is hold the thread very loose, cut it at a slight angle, and that usually gives you a sharp piece of thread. Now we're going to come down through the thread guide, which is the white porcelain, go in behind the thread hook. Now this is important because this keeps the thread in line with the groove of the needle. This is the front of a needle. The back of a needle has a scarf or indentation right above the eye of the needle. The groove is in the front. This hook keeps the thread in line with the groove and the eye of the needle. So once we get the needle threaded, on this machine I can pull down a pressure foot. Keep in mind tweezers come in pretty handy and can be your best friend when threading a machine. Now this model machine, the pressure foot is in junction with the needle bar, so it comes down as it sews. So from there you want to go through the bottom of the pressure foot and come back up with roughly 1 inch of thread hanging there. Repeat that for all needles. This is part of the startup process of your machine. Now that we have the machine threaded, what we're going to do is mount our OP or operations panel to the machine. This is the touchscreen that comes with the machine. It's basically going to come unassembled in about 4 pieces. The first is the mounting plate that you see that I've already attached. This is 4 screws simply on the back of the bracket. Keep in mind that all the screws that you need are already in the bracket or the monitor or even the emergency switch. The screws are in what they need to go in, so you remove them to attach them. The next thing we're going to do from there is attach our emergency stop switch for the machine. It'll have 1 connector. Again, there's 4 screws in the back of it. You will find the first connector for it right here. All the connectors are different size and shape, so you're not going to get this wrong. So what you're going to do is connect your emergency stop and then just push that cable back through the opening here where all the cables come out of the machine. This is the sewing arm, down the mounting rod for the OP panel. So now we're ready to mount our OP box. So I'm going to grab it here on the side. So you'll notice this is our touch panel OP for the MAS machine. If you look on the back, the screws that are needed are already in it, so we're going to remove those. Now once I remove those 4 screws for the mounting to the base plate here, I'm also going to remove the 1 screw in the bottom. It'll be right here in the corner. This is where we attach the ground wire to the OP box. So I'll take that screw off as well. Now what you want to do is gently keep in mind that this is a touch panel. This is the most expensive part of this machine. So you look on the back, the USB cables are up, the posts are to the right. So we can set that here on our emergency switch. You'll notice underneath the bottom, this is where our connectors go. There's only 2 connectors. You'll see there's an arrow for MC. This is where the Cat 7 cable goes, and then the ground wire here. And then right to the side of it is a 2-prong plug, and that is where the power connector goes. So all we're going to do is turn that over. We're going to connect our Cat 7, that is our data information transfer cable. And then we are connecting our power connector. Right. Once those 2 are connected, just gently make sure we're not dropping the box. If you need somebody to help you, that's fine. Okay, we're going to insert our ground wire on the box. Make sure that's snug. Reconfirm our connections are good, and now from there I can set this up. Find my screws that I took out of the back. And again, be gentle, do not drop this box. And the screw holes, once you get the first one in, the rest are going to line up. Word of advice, working on anything, on any piece of equipment there is, do not tighten one screw until every screw is installed. Then you can go back and retighten all, and you're good to go. So at this point, we are connecting the OP box to the base plate. All 4 screws are in. The last piece that we need to assemble, this is our manual keypad that comes with the machine. This has our start and stop button on it, framing arrows, a trim function, and data origin button. If you look on the back, once again, the screws we need, the 2 in the center, are to mount here on this base plate. So I'm going to remove those 2 screws. Now this one has only one connector, but you can see here it also has a ground wire that will mount to the top of the top screw on the OP box, but this one we can get to once it's physically mounted. So now I'm going to connect that. It only goes in one way, so you're not going to get it wrong. Make sure it's pushed all the way in. Make sure this is turned to where it's square up against. Don't turn it upside down. Okay, now once that's there, we're going to get our screws back in to the base plate so it's mounted. Again, if you want to have somebody help you with this, 3 hands are better than 2. Once we line up the first hole, the other one will line up automatically. Again, do not tighten it up until you get both screws in. And now I can tighten both of those up. And now I'm going to remove the screw on the top right of the OP box. And this is where I'm going to mount the ground wire for the manual keypad here on the side. Take your time, be patient. Remember, always double check your connections, make sure they're good. Get it mounted. Once everything's in place, the arm does pivot in and out, so you can see that it'll go at different angles, so you can set it what's more comfortable for you. It'll pivot up or down, but once in place, make sure you go through and tighten everything down. We don't want it moving during the embroidery process. Okay, from there, the next step is we're going to show you the power up on the machine, and we're ready to start testing. Okay, now that everything is assembled, we got the machine on the stand, we got the stand assembled, the thread tree assembled, everything's threaded, we got our OP box mounted correctly on the machine. Now it's time for power up. This is the power cord that you'll find in the box. You'll notice it's a standard PC connection cable that's on there. The other end, it's a 3-wire, of course, grounded cable. I do advise a lot of times you may want to check these even from the factory. You can open them up, just check and make sure those connections are nice and tight inside of there. Ever unplugging and removing your machine, remember, never pull by the cable, pull by the plug. That way you never interfere with the connections inside of here. If you notice on the back of your MAS machine, whether it's the 12 or the 15 needle, your on-off switch is here in the back. We're going to make sure that's down and in the off position. The PC connection cable goes here. Make sure it's pushed all the way in, and then we're ready to connect to our 110 AC power. Now that everything is assembled, we have the machine threaded, the OP box mounted on the machine. We've already went through the connections on the power cable. We're ready to power up the machine for the first time. Keep in mind there may be a couple of issues that arise during this process, and we're going to go ahead and cover those now. So everything's hooked up, we're plugged up to power, we're ready to go. On the back of this machine where the power plug powers in, you will find the on-off switch. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on right now. You'll hear the click. And if you'll notice, the machine starts to boot. This is your normal startup screen with the SWF splash screen on it. goes through its self-check. Comes up, the motor's everything engaged. Now you'll notice the first message that I get, warning, the emergency switch stop was pushed. So keep in mind, during the assembly process and everything else, your emergency stop mounts here below your OP box. If you notice the arrows turn clockwise, simply turn that to the right. The emergency stop comes out and it disengages. Push it in to engage. It is an emergency stop on the machine. Works very similar to the stop button, but it should stop it a little faster. The next thing I'm going to cover is I'm going to turn the machine off. Just because of the shipping and the assembly process, we may run into a situation where the color change system may be off on you. So now I'm going to go ahead and power it up again. Again, always you're going to see this normal boot sequence with the splash screen. Then it goes through its self-check. You hear the motors, everything engage. And we'll wait and see what error we get this time. Okay, screen comes up, everything engages. Okay, now if you notice, the first error that pops up now is an error 300. This is the color change system on the machine where it changes colors from needles 1 to 12 or 1 to 15. The color change system's directly behind this tension base. There's a knob here. What you're doing is you can turn this knob. I would normally suggest trying first, and what you'll find is when you're off a needle position, it's going to give you the error. When you're dead on, it will actually go away. The easiest way to actually fix this is to actually fix the fix button right there on the control panel, and it'll fix itself and the error will go away. Again, this is something that could have happened during the assembly process or during the shipping of the machine. The next thing I want to show you one more time, we're going to turn this machine off. We're going to turn it back on. Again, we're going to go through the normal boot process, and we'll wait for everything to engage. And I'm creating another error right now that could possibly happen during the setup of the machine. Everything engages, and now we get the error 100. We have the fix button here as well. Now on the MAS model machines, whether it's the 12 or the 15 needle, this is called the degree wheel or the home position on the machine. It's the fixed position of 100. On the back of the machine, you will find a degree wheel and an arrow that points to the red mark, which is 100 degrees on the machine, and you'll notice the error goes away. Again, these are a couple of things that can happen during the first startup process, just simply because of shipping or the assembly process of things getting moved around. Okay, now that the machine is powered up, we're having no error messages or anything like that we just covered. Next thing we're going to do is install our bobbin case inside the rotary hook. So we're going to open up the rotary hook cover. First thing you'll notice is that from the factory they pack it with a felt piece basically coated in oil, so we're going to remove that. Inside your tool bag you're going to find the bobbin case that goes into the machine. This is a standard L bobbin case. There's a hinge door on the side. This is how you remove it, but do not use that to put in. You always want to hear the click. Another thing you'll notice is there is a tension spring on the inside of that bobbin case. This is only in there if you use the pre-wound, or not pre-wound, but you wind your own bobbins in the metal bobbin cases, and almost nobody does that. So if you do not do that, this is unnecessary. So if you're using a sideless bobbin, cardboard, in this case we're going to use a Filtech, which is the magnetic core. Can't even be put in wrong because it only goes one direction. So this always needs to be removed. The next thing we're going to do is take our bobbin with our bobbin case. Now this is the Filtech, so it's got the blue core, You'll see it actually has a magnet on the back side. This goes to the inside of the bobbin case. We'll pull the thread. Now, any other bobbin, you always got to make sure it is spinning clockwise. You have the center post of the bobbin case. If I turn it around, you'll see this is where the hinge door is, and there's a little pigtail up here at the top. The pigtail actually doesn't even have anything to do with sewing. It's here because the trimming system is under the needle plate, and that pigtail keeps the thread at the 12 o'clock position where the trimmers are. So this will slide in. You'll actually hear a little click because it's magnetic. You come around, there's a little 5 o'clock slot here. The thread clips right in underneath the bottom of the tension spring. You'll notice it's raised in the back, down in the front. Tension's only created at the very tip. This is where you feel for the tension on the machine, or for the bobbin case. Then you wrap the pigtail. It goes in the bottom, out the top. It's basically 2 turns. You hold the thread down over the front of the case. Again, hinge door only to take out, not to put in. Use your thumb and forefinger, and I call it the 3-finger rule. If you look, I got 3 fingers left when I'm holding it this way. I snap at the pinky or cut, and then from here it leaves 3 inches of thread. This is the right amount of thread for your machine to start sewing. So from there I go in at a little angle, make sure we center that on the post, and always, always, always hear the click. So once again, to remove, it's out. I want to do 3-finger rule, in, and always, always, always hear the click. That is very important. Grab that thread and close that. Okay, now from the factory your cap driver is mounted. This is called a quick change cap driver. So we're going to go ahead and remove this because we're going to test the machine first with the flat hoop. So we just lift up, and when I take the quick change cap driver off, you'll notice what's left is the tubular arms, and I have a hoop prepared for that. Next, we're going to go to the OP box and start the basic programming of the machine. Now that the machine is almost prepared to sew and ready for production, what we're going to do is go over the basic operations of the OP box. You'll notice it is a large display. It is a touch screen. Down here along the bottom, every icon that you physically see, these are the function keys. This is where we perform all of our functions. The icons you see on the right hand side are our manual tools. For example, manual color change, doing a manual trim, our frame for our data origin and origin, needle down functions, and frame movement. These can also be found, the majority of, down here on this manual keypad that is separate. It's either found usually mounted below the OP box or to the right hand side. So what we're going to do is start with the very basics of your machine. So to run an OP box on an SWF, there is 4 steps to production. And the good part is they are actually in order. 1, 2, 3, 4 in the function. First is design. You have to load the design into the machine, okay? In this case, we're going to use the USB, which is most common, but SWF does have a SENS network where you can connect this machine with a CAT cable and send the design, or you can even send wirelessly through a wireless hub. But for these purposes, we're just going to use a thumb drive, which is still pretty standard in the industry. This is through design. Setting and design settings is where we're going to do our angle. That is either right side up or upside down. You'll notice just the display showing right now is upside down, so that actually tells me that the design is setting at 180 degrees, as well as right here, this is all information is showing me 180 degrees. Okay. Next function is needles. This is where we program our colors. And the most important one is frame. This is where we do our trace, knowing the design fits inside the hoop and we don't hit the hoop. Okay, the machine can sew through 1/4 inch thick leather. It cannot sew through plastic and metal. It will be damaged and not covered under warranty. This is operator error. Okay, so keep in mind the function keys are in order. The information on the screen over here, we have the total stitch count that the machine has done, the total work that the machine has done. This is the stitch count of the current logo. This is the size. If you notice, it's in the metric system. All machines are made overseas. However, With the new MS and KX series machines, if you simply touch that, you can convert it to inches, which makes a lot more sense for us Americans. Okay, down below there, it's how many colors are in the design, how many jump stitches, what the angle is set at, and you see that we did not change the scale. These numbers right here indicate what colors are programmed to sew. Right now for this design, under needle, it's just programmed as needle 1, and of course here is our speed. Okay, so to start, we're going to insert our USB. We're going to touch design. We're going to touch USB. You'll notice I've got multiple files on there. We're going to find the one that we want. So I'm going to scroll down because what I'm looking for is the H test. So I'm going to touch H. Okay, and then what we're going to do here is plus folder. So what we're telling it is from the thumb drive, we chose this design and we're going into one of the folders in the machine. Now you have what's called either the design folder or the user folder. My advice, as much as possible, use the user folder. This is limited to 99 designs, where this is basically unlimited. So we go to there, it's going into room number 1, this design into the machine folder, and save, and it literally loads that fast. From there I'll hit previous. It's going to give me a preview screen. I can go to design right here, which would allow me to rotate the angle number 3 if I chose to. I'm going to leave it at 0 the way it is. If I wanted to change it, I would do touch 180, and you would see it would change upside down. I want to leave it at 0. I'm going to click OK and close. Now I'm going to program my needles. This test is for all 15 needles on the machine. We're testing it for the first time. This is also used as a tension test, so you know if you got your bobbin tension set correctly for an auto adjusting system. I'm simply going to program this in order: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. I'm going to hit close. And then from here I can either load and make it active, or I can use the save. The save feature is nice. Do you want to save the changes to this design? If I hit yes, remember it's going into room number 1. That design from the USB, it's already been loaded. If I hit yes, it actually retains the information of the angle and the colors that I sewed for later use. Now I hit load, and it's the active design that pulls up. So you'll notice right now it's setting at 180 degrees upside down. If I want to change that back, I'm going to go to setting, and under design there's the 180. Tell it OK, and then close. You'll see that now it's at 0 degree angle. Just keep in mind that all hats sew upside down on all machines. Anything bulky or big that needs to hang off the machine, like towels, you're going to sew upside down as well. Next is the needles, but remember we've already programmed those in the shortcut screen. But if you wanted to change them, you go to needle. Then the most important function there is whatsoever is the trace feature of the machine, which we're going to pause, position our hoop, and then we're going to be ready to sew once we do our trace. Okay, now that we've repositioned, I've got me a hoop on the machine. Now keep in mind this is the 18 centimeter hoop that comes inside your machine. This is the one we do our test sew outs with. This is 2.5 ounce, cutaway backing. That's pretty much the standard in the industry. Make sure it covers the entire hoop, 2 layers. It's compression hoop, adjust before. Make sure it's always the drum effect. Even during normal embroidery, it's got to be nice and tight. It's going to go on the machine and clips into place. Okay. Now from there I need to position. So what I can do is I can either use the manual buttons here, or I can use the position here on the touchscreen. On either one there's a speed button in the center that is indicated here on the top left hand corner. So H is for high speed, low speed, and medium speed. Most of the time I like to leave it on medium. From here I'm simply positioning so that I'm in the center of the hoop. Now a little trick on any machine that has more than 12 needles in it, okay, is if you position 1 in the center, 11 will be over top the Phillips head screw on the left hand side center. Now if you notice I get an error limit detection here. This is because the machine's limit is set, so I'm going to hit limit cancel. I'm going to show you why it did that. I'm going to go into frame. This is where we do our tracing feature. So remember, we've already loaded the design, we changed the angle, we programmed the colors, and the most important part is to trace. So we're going to go to frame. Okay, we'll see our design is here on the screen. If I actually go to hoop and then I choose flat and 18 centimeter, that it was on. So you'll notice it says, do you want to change? Now keep in mind, if you ever do use any of your hoop features whatsoever, the most important thing is that the hoop or cap driver is not on the machine, because it will move to the position of where the center of that should be. Most of the time we're simply using the default function, therefore it's unlimited. We trace, we position, we sew anywhere that we want on the machine. So again, with the hoop on, I'm going to close that now that I'm on default. I'm going to position the needle 11 screw over the Phillips head screw on the left hand side center of the hoop, to the left of SWF right there. Make sure you're on needle 1. This is where the laser is, and this will put you dead center of any round hoop or even the large hoops when you put it on the machine. So from there I'm going to go to the frame, and you got two choices. We have the trace feature, or we have the outline. I normally recommend the outline, as it traces the exact outline of the logo. You'll notice the perimeter is larger. It's actually about 10 millimeters, so you can actually zoom that down with the zoom button, so it's exact. Okay, and then from there you're going to hit here. This is the play button, and you'll notice what it's going to do, and it's visual. You still watch it. Once I hit play, it says outline trace. Do you want to start? Yes. And I'm watching to make sure that that fits completely inside of the hoop that I'm sewing. If it doesn't, if you're in the wrong position, reposition. But if it does not fit, you have three choices and only three. The first one is a bigger hoop. The second one, a smaller design. The third one is don't do it, because you're going to damage the equipment. We're going to close to get out of there. If you notice from the factory, my speed is set at 1,000. I'm actually going to slow that down for my first test sew out. Probably somewhere around the 750, 800 mark. So the machine's set up, we're threaded, bobbin's in, cap driver is off, all connections are good, steps to production, load design, change the angle, needles, most importantly trace, and outline trace with the play button on the side. From there, your start and stop buttons are down here on your manual keypad to start, and then you would hit start, and it's going to move into position and start sewing the first logo. A good example here, if you notice, everything is moving, everything's perfect and fine, but the machine is not sewing. This is on purpose. Back up is simply the stop button. We'll back up to the beginning of the design, or you push start to back up one stitch at a time. It's not sewing because the head switch is not on. Red light always has to be on. Now that it's on, now the needle's going to go up and down